when it comes to the Anishinaabe taxonomy of plants, the way that plants are named, one of my favorite ideas is that plant is named after a special relationship that it has with another creature. And so this can be with mammals, this can be with rodents and insects and birds and even fish and crustaceans. Like there's every plant has a creature that it has a special relationship with. And that is what makes that plant unique. That's what makes that plant special. And that's how we remember that plant. So one of the ones that I wanted to be able to share is this one. It's called Mooshkowaawis. This is wild Beebalm or wild Bergamont. Monarda fistulosa is the Latin name. It's a super, super common plant. One that I have to spend time with every single year. It's really, really amazing. It's in the mint family, so it's got a really, really strong like bergamot, mint, field mint type of smell. This medicine is most often or more often than not used in smoke medicine because when you actually make tea with it, it's not the best tasting. And God forbid if you apply any amount of heat to it or using hot water, you're just going to get bitter nastiness. Not a lot of people really come to appreciate the taste of tea made from this plant. And I feel like if you do, you're making it up a little because it's authentically, it's not really that good. This can be used only in cold infusions. So when you take a bunch of the plant and you just put it in cold water, you apply any amount of heat, you put it in the sun, you make sun tea, it's going to pull out all that nastiness. And there is nastiness. And so more often than not, it's not used in our tea. It's used in smoke medicine. So there's some real physical applications for that. Like one of the things that this does extremely powerfully is it promotes diaphoresis, which is sweating. So it makes you sweat. And like I always tell everybody, one day my wife says, we're cleaning the basement. That's always an awful thing to hear. But here we were cleaning the basement and it was so fun because I had a whole bunch of medicine like everywhere. And so, now I had to like actually finish processing it and working with it. So there was a massive, like it was like a hockey bag full of bergamot, full of Mooshkowaawis, full of this plant. Sometimes it's called sasapkwas. We'll talk about that in a second. But I was in my basement and I was just separating the leaves and the flowers, and I like having those in one jar and then all of the stems inside of another jar. Just because it makes processing it way easier. When you want to make tea with the leaves and flowers, it's there. And then the stems, they need to be crushed up. And so I like to powder those stems and utilize those stems just in smoke medicine. And that's what it does is you release that smell into the air and it pulls all that sweat from your body. It's a really fantastic feeling. But here, me and my wife were cleaning the basement. It was cold. The basement was cold, and that's what makes it uncomfortable. But put on a little bit of music, and then we're just doing our thing, cleaning. And then I grabbed all these bergamots, and I'm separating them all, and I'm sweating buckets, and I'm wondering like, what the heck is going on? Like I knew it was going to be work to clean the basement, but I'm just sitting here, and I'm sweating, and my hands were wet. All the plants are getting stuck to me, and I was like, what the heck is going on? And then my wife was sweating. She was across the whole basement, and she was already, so much of this medicine was in the air that it was making her sweat as well. So then we left, and then we're like all uncomfortable, and then we're like, oh, it's because of the medicine. That's why we were sweating. It was such a really weird realization for us. But it was amazing to kind of feel the power of it, feel the effect of it, and to feel like, yeah, that's why we burn a little bit in our house to Pkwenezageh, to smudge with. We have reasons to utilizing, 4 sacred medicines in our smudging protocol and practice, but there's so much other smoke medicine that or so many ways that plants can be utilized as a smoke medicine, and that are very pragmatic and practical, like Mooshkowaawis, the bergamot, to use it as a medicine to help make you sweat, breaking fevers, to cooling yourself off, to one of your body's primary detoxification systems, your lymphatic system, get that flowing and moving. The uses or opportunities for this are really endless, dramatic, and just really beautiful to kind of be a part of. The name of it, Mooshkowaawis. This is talking about a special relationship that this plant has with Mooshko. Mooshko is an elk. Just to clarify really quickly, there's a lot of different types of deer that we have in the Great Lakes region. These are white-tailed deer, and these are Waawaashkeshii or Waawaashkeshii. That's a white-tailed deer. And it's just talking about the way their tail looks when they run away, waving goodbye with their big white tail, and the way that it bounces. It really, really fascinating name for this creature. But elk is Mooshko, and that's kind of just defining the ecosystem that this creature is dominant in, which is Mshkosneiing. So you hear Mshkosneiing and Mooshko, they're talking about the same thing, which is like a tall grass meadow or a tall grass prairie kind of area. And that's obviously the ecosystem that elk is most dominant in, is in the tall grass meadows. So Mshkosneiing, that's where Mooshkowaawis, that's where he lives. The other thing that I kind of wanted to make sure is to talk about like caribou. We call these Adik. Whitefish is Adikmek, and trees are Tik, Mtik. And so there's really interesting kind of connections that I wanted to unravel from there. But pretty universally, Adik is a caribou, and elk is Mooshko, and a moose is Mooz. Just talking about their big fat lips, just eating twigs all the time, just grazing on twigs all day long. That's their job or responsibility, is pruning trees for us. So Mooz, and so Mooz, Mooshko, Adik, and Waawaashkeshii. That's our main exposures to the deer family. So, of course, I wanted to focus on Mooshko, our elk, and Mooshkowaawis. So, it kind of really sucks because elk used to, this is their natural territory. There was in and throughout the Great Lakes, sort of separating white-tailed deer populations from moose populations. Elk was right in the middle. And so this was their jam. Where we are right now, it used to be everywhere, except their buck teeth are made of ivory, so they were killed to make cufflinks and jewelry and stuff from those ivory teeth, which sucked for the elk and us, because now they're almost completely removed from our territory. There's repopulation efforts that have been happening for like 20 years, so it's really promising to see them come back. But what is interesting, though, is if you're looking at where elk are now, mainly throughout the states where elk live now, and you're looking at the indigenous people in those territories and the word that they use to describe this plant. We call it Mooshkowaawis. That means like elk medicine, or it's acknowledging the special connection between this plant and elk. This is a tool that elk utilize, that elk need to be near and are obsessed with, and share a special relationship or connection to. So we acknowledge that in the name of this plant, Mooshkowaawis. And you're looking at the territories where this plant and elk occur naturally now throughout the states, like Lakota tribes and Sioux and a bunch of those areas. They all refer to this plant as elk medicine. So in their languages, in Lakota and Dakota and Sioux languages, the way that they describe this plant translates to exactly the same thing, elk medicine. So it doesn't matter where you're looking at this plant or who is looking at this plant, it's always called elk medicine. And it's because of a connection they have to it. And so seeking this plant out as a medicinal therapy, they protect this plant. And so, like in all of the areas, this plant occurs in temperate areas, so areas that have winter. And obviously, when you have winter, you have no plants or most of the plants die off. So is the case with this one. When this plant leaves, elk loses access to that medicine. It loses access to this plant that it has a special connection to. So there's a separation from. And if you can understand the connection between that creature and this plant, and you can understand when that separation occurs, and you can measure when the desire for that creature to connect with that plant is going to be the strongest, when it's going to miss that plant the most, you could miijmaakijige, you could take advantage of that plant's or that creature's connection to that plant and harvest a bunch of it and use it to Pkwenezageh. You use it to cover yourself when you're smudging to go hunting. There's a famous smoke medicine called a Pkwenezageh. Pak1 is a roof, a covering that protects you from rain. Pak1, Pkwenezageh, to close the door, to establish that separation between you and the other room. So that's what this Pkwenezageh does, is it creates a covering that protects the smell of you from that animal. But it doesn't do that by overwhelming, or it doesn't do it by suppressing your human scent. It does it by changing that creature, exposing it to something that it loves more than it is afraid of you. And so when you use that to smudge yourself, or if you burn a little bit of that in the meadow, wherever that smoke is going, all of these elk just cannot wait until spring, until Mooshkowaawis will come back. And so when they smell it, they say, "Hey, I smell Mooshkowaawis right now. I'm going to go and check that out." And then their kids smell, "Oh, this man, he's from Ottawa," or this woman, she's from Renfrew or something. I don't know. And then it's like, so the elk are kind of like, "Hey, I don't like this, but I can't help it, because my medicine is over there," and they'll more recklessly approach you. And so to Miijmaakijige, to take advantage of that creature's connection to that plant, is how we use this plant, Mooshkowaawis. So it's important for us, in the understanding of Anishinaabe taxonomy of plants, how we name plants. Sometimes what makes that plant unique is a connection that it has to somebody else, and that is something that you don't normally see in taxonomic procedures and protocols, like especially with scientific taxonomy, a process that only looks at distinguishing physical features of aerial components, never considering the roots, never considering the idea that a plant can be connected to something, and it's that connection that is unique. And so, it's really just kind of interesting to think about these ideas and the opportunities that can arise. So you could take a second and you could kind of think critically. I do a lot of my work is most of my work, sort of bread and butter, is private consultations with teaching about plant knowledge. So a lot of it has to do with medicine and health and healing and things, but a lot of it has to do with like environmental health. A lot of it has to do with species at risk and environment or an ecosystem management type things. And so we work at all different capacities. And this is one of my favorite conversations to have with groups that are concerned about environmental or ecosystem management type things, is to share the importance of learning the Anishinaabe names of plants, because it helps with your understanding. There's connections and relationships out there that are really special and unique. It also helps with your opportunity to be able to live a good life, Anishinaabemowin, in this part of the world. Meaning, if you have access to this type of knowledge and you learn how to use it, it's going to make your hunting elk experience much more effective, much more ethical, to be able to get closer to the animal, right? And so you're going to be able to have a greater opportunity to be able to live a good life. But also, when you're thinking about ecosystem management and species survival, species management, to understand the importance of learning and understanding these connections to enhance your opportunity to help certain species, to help protect, to help the survival of, to the spread of pathogens, to so many different things. This needs to be more well understood. so that we can have a clear measurement of our opportunity now to help with the species survival when we're introducing it into its traditional areas, right? I hope I said that appropriately, but there's so many reasons why plant names are important. And so when we're talking about the identity of a plant being embedded in a unique relationship that it has to somebody or something else, utilizing that to fast track our ability to conduct proper research, to be better equipped to managing species. But yeah, so there's that to consider as well, and that is just held within the name of the plant, because we've been walking past this plant for thousands of years, saying elk medicine. That's what this plant is. Like, that's its proper name, elk medicine. And to truly understand this plant's identity and essence, you need to have an understanding of this plant's purpose and connection to elk. So that's really fun, and it's really interesting to see those consistencies among indigenous groups throughout the entire United States and the way that this plant is referred to. There's Mooshkowaawis, the wild bergamont or Beebalm, Monarda fistulosa. Really, really special. Lots to learn when we're looking at the names of plants.